Hello and welcome to a special series of Blocktalk, which we're calling Blocktalk Explores. These quick listen episodes will be split by topic area, as our guests, who are all industry leaders in Scotland, will be discussing three specific industry topics. Topic number one is education and awareness of the industry and what property factors do. Number two is recruitment within the industry and any challenges that they see. And the third one is customer care. We'll release 2 episodes in week 1, and the third will be released the following week. We hope you enjoy the series, and as always, it would be great to hear your feedback. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Blocktalk podcast. So we've got a special series going just now called Blocktalk Explores. So in this episode, we're going to talk to Andrew Bulmer about recruitment. I'm not going to give Andrew's bio, so he needs no introduction. He's a prominent figure in the property management for many years and is now serving as CEO of the Property Institute. Shall we go on to recruitment? Okay. This question brings out a huge amount of things, actually, and especially at this time. Could you tell us about your experience with recruitment, or possibly members of TPI as well, if you know about that?
Well, there's 2 different. We could. That brings it up to 3, then, doesn't it? So there's recruitment, as in when I ran my own business. So my own business was in the provinces, in the middle of England. And there were very few people with the necessary skills and qualifications to do what we did, which is traditional block management. So generally, I grew my own, and I only poached one person. Everybody else was homegrown or converted, surveying skills or what have you, and then converted across. So that was always tricky. TPI, the Property Institute, formerly Alma at IRPM, is an interesting one because I very much recruited on. I need to say that I'm trying to think of the right word to say this so that I'm using the right language rather than using something which could be found to be a bit off-piste, but. Recruiting on, I'd say, for recruiting on culture, recruiting on philosophy, recruiting on attitude. Because if you've got highly engaged people that are supportive, the reality is that provided they believe in what it is that you are doing and they are doing, you've got a fantastic team, and that has certainly proven to be the case. Bringing the 2 organisations together. No 2 organisations have the same culture. By definition, there has to be a mismatch, so you're putting 2 cultures into one. And I'm pleased, it's probably tempting fate here, but I'm pleased that so far we've kept both teams and indeed recruited new.
Okay, good.
And I think that's fantastic. That's a huge tribute to them. That they, were able to look across the other lot, the new people, who were them then, and go with it and buy in. And as they started to learn each other and understood each other, they recognised that there are so many talented people within the organisation. So that has I've been very lucky with my team, that they've taken that sort of positive approach. But if there's a blow my own trumpet a little bit, I think it is about being that we set a positive tone and an expectation of tolerance, where we're pushing boundaries, things go wrong. So it's really important to have a no blame culture. I tried something, it didn't work. Okay, well, there's a learning outcome and we move on, but nobody's going to get for something that doesn't work. And I think that's been absolutely critical. Turning to the third piece, which will be what's going on in the sector, my word, it's difficult at the moment. Our recent survey tells us that about 1 in 5 vacancies are not filled, and we know that the average working day for somebody managing buildings is about 45 hours a week.
Right.
So they're putting in shifts. And you'd expect that if you've got unfilled vacancies. So it's a challenging role, and it's not without its benefits if you stand back from it, but it is a challenging role. And when you're backfilling for people who aren't there, if you've got an undersized team, then the burden does become significant. And we are certainly seeing churn. It is noticeable because we have the data on our database, who's working for whom. It is noticeable that some firms are churning more than others.
Yeah,
that speaks again of the culture of the firm. I know of some firms that at one point were hitting a 50% staff churn on the front line.
Wow,
that's not sustainable. That really hurts. I know one housing association that hits 70%. So Lord knows what's happening in there. Other firms are doing rather better. And also there is pay disparity because the first question anybody asks is how much. It doesn't matter what it is, how much. We want you to manage the building, how much? Okay, well, I want to go and work for you, how much? And yes, people will move for pay. But actually, again, if the culture is right, if they feel good in their space, then pay doesn't. They may say that pay is the determining factor, but actually looking forward to going into to see your pals, to see your team, and feeling good about the place that you work is for me, I think, a key driving factor as one of the components of the benefits of employment.
Yeah, no, actually, to be fair, there's a huge amount to pick up on in there. The next question will pick up on some of it. I do get what you mean. I mean, there's this horrible phrase. It's not a horrible phrase. It's a phrase that I agree with it to a certain extent, is that people join companies but leave managers. Because at the end of the day, you join a company because you feel as if that's where you want to fit in. And if that doesn't work, then that can cause an exit. The other thing is as well that the culture of a business and the way in which it reacts with every single thing it does is so important. In fact, the way we actually recruit now, I mean, we've got CPL has 20 staff, right? And it had 14 6 months ago. Okay, and we have a head of people and culture now. Okay, she only works 3 days a week. She's a very experienced person, and she followed me from a business that I used to have. I don't know whether that means. I don't know what that means. I'll not go into that. She can maybe answer that one day herself. But one of the things that we now do, because she understands who I am, what I'm good at. One of the things she does is she runs all our recruitment, and the first interview is nothing to do with technical ability. Okay, so you've read a CV, you've had a look. The first interview, which is normally telephone, is to make sure they're a culture fit. And if they're not a culture fit with the organization, they don't even get through to technical. Now, they could be the most technical person in the world, but unless we feel that they fit with our culture, they won't get it. And actually, we've had 2 people now in the last 6 months actually say that they are willing to take a cut in pay to come and work for us because they want to work for us. Now, when you get to that stage, you've got to make sure your shop is as good as the front window, right? You're pushing all this stuff out saying, how good you are, and people are looking in and seeing that culture. You just got to make sure that what's in the back is as good, because if it's not, they will leave very, very quickly. But I think it's so important. And the very first boss I ever had said something to me one day. He said, you can teach technical ability. You cannot teach personality and attitude. Yeah, and it stuck with me my entire career that you cannot change someone's personality or their attitude to work. Yeah.
Fundamentally, you can't change the spots on a leopard. I agree, but with the right culture, you can bring people forward that otherwise wouldn't. You can lift people up that might be struggling. We've recently carried out a staff survey, and the results were generally pretty good, but there were some learning outcomes in there. And, I'm pretty pleased with the team, but there are things that we can improve. And when you do a staff survey, you find out what they are.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly helpful to further improve on that.
Yeah. Yeah, we do this thing every. I don't know if you've come across this. We do this thing every. Like, we don't actually do it every Friday. We do it actually Thursday, but it's called Friday Pulse, and it measures the pulse of the organization. It asks one question: how happy are you? Okay, so now you don't. We KPI response. We don't KPI happiness. You can't KPI happiness. You not. You know. Excuse my French, but shit happens all of the time. People have good weeks, they have bad weeks. There's problems happen, but it's looking at how resilient the business is. So when you've had a dip, how quickly does it come back, and all these sort of things, and also it gives people the opportunity to publicly thank their colleagues and share celebrations and share frustrations as well. So we find it a really useful tool to kind of gauge where we are and how we're doing. So yeah, I mean, but it's similar to your survey. Yeah, similar to your survey. You've got to, if you don't know, you can't fix it.
Yeah. The pulse thing is something that actually we've discussed and are looking to introduce. So we'll keep you posted on that one.
Good. Okay, so some of the things you mentioned there come into the category. So we talked to Malcolm Perryman from the Property Institute and Zoe Southwell from Recruitment. Now, this was after the survey, because Malcolm's been on before to talk about the survey, and also I think they did a session at the last ARM conference on the kind of results and talking about these sort of things. And there were a couple of things that came out of that. And this is not obviously 100%, but there was a likelihood that employers in this sector were probably as grey-haired as I am, probably my age or older, and male, but their employees and the people that the average property manager was 30s, female. So there was a kind of disparity maybe between how those kind of two people spoke to each other. But also there was a bit of a disparity in the survey. The kind of top three things that benefits in a business. One was pension. Okay, it's not really a benefit these days because it's mandatory almost. Paying for someone's professional membership and paying for training. So those are seen as the kind of top three things that are provided. But the top three things that people actually wanted were more holidays, flexible working, and not flexible working in that saying you can come in on a Tuesday and Thursday and don't come in. Flexible working as in the employee chooses. And the third thing was bonus. Yeah. So there was a bit of a disparity between those things. Any views on, and this, I guess, is this a reason people leave and some people have a 50% churn rate? Is this the reason 1 out of 5 jobs is vacant? Yeah. I don't know what your view on that is.
I'd struggle to link those notions to statistics. Mm-hmm. But clearly, flexible working, people want to come into the office for a bit. They want to see each other. It's a healthy thing, a bit of human interaction.
Yep.
But where they have home circumstances permit, because not everybody has. I'm very lucky. I have a spare bedroom and I've turned it into an office and I've got a great working environment. Not everybody has that.
Yeah.
When you're perched on a kitchen table, especially when the kids come home and need to do their homework or have a clatter around, it becomes a difficult working environment. So I think it's different for different people.
Yeah.
One of the sort of macro trends of this country is that we tend, to some extent, perhaps to a lesser extent, to follow the United States. And if you look at American realtors in so many things, thankfully not everything, but we haven't had somebody wearing horns marching up Downing Street yet. But give it time. If you look at the American realtors, you get a strong bias towards women working in that sector.
Yep.
And the American culture is one where the work-life balance is very blended.
Yep.
I don't necessarily think it's healthy. It's not very compartmentalized, but you will have, and this is very gender stereotypical. It kind of implies that the women look after the kids while the blokes go off and do hero things, but which of course is nonsense. But historically, it's come from a base where the woman was able to build her job and organize her life around her family first.
Okay.
So the kids need these things, and then maybe do a viewing in the evening, for example.
Yeah.
So it provided it's a slightly anarchic system. It's very commission driven. So nobody's watching the clock. It comes down to to that person has got to perform, get those sales. But it allowed that individual to have flexibility to integrate their life and their needs and their family with the work that they were doing. And that works to the benefit of everybody. So there's the flexibility piece. I don't think is going to go away, and I think a recognition that people have families and lives is, and something you may be a carer or something like that. Where the industry is able to flex around those, I think industry will benefit. But there is a need to get back in the office and see folk from time to time as well, definitely. Socially as much as anything else. We have a thing where we just get together every Tuesday and Thursday morning on Zoom. Everybody piles in just for potentially, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's half an hour, and it's a good time to be able to communicate across the team. Working virtually, but also I make a point of talking nonsense. There's and having chatter. And it may be about football or somebody's dog or somebody's gone hang gliding or whatever it is, but it's important to spare a bit of time. In what those online things often tend to be quite structured and formal. It's good to just go off piste and talk nonsense for a bit, because that's what you do around the kettle in the office. That's what you do when just leaning around a desk and having a chat with your colleagues. So I like to run a thread of informality through it and let everybody spend a bit of time on it socially as well.
Okay. No, that's interesting. I do agree with you. I mean, we've had some massively varying views on this subject, on this kind of office, no office, and to me, you're right. I mean, flexible can mean I want to go to the office 5 days a week. You know what I mean? So that's what somebody wants to do. And in fact, Jax is in our office at the moment. She's in 2 or 3 days a week, depending on workload, and she's pretty much always in the office. Yeah, but you also, I tend to go in kind of when I can, but normally Tuesdays and Thursdays during the week, just because it I guess it breaks up the week. I think the thing that I miss is when you're in an office environment, especially if you're in an open plan office environment, you kind of learn by osmosis, right? You hear something and you help someone out, and you can chat to someone, and and you gather information when you're not necessarily in a meeting to gather information. And I think that's what I miss the most. I mean, we and to get around that, we huddle every morning. So everyone in the organization huddles with their lead or line manager in the morning, and we get through all our huddles by kind of 9:30. So it's 10 minutes. What you get a minute. What did you do yesterday? What do you do today? And what have you got in roadblocks? You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. But that doesn't get away from, "Hi, Brian, how would you deal with this? And how would you deal with that?" And these sort of things.
That osmosis point, I think, is really critical for bringing on the next generation. And I'm not speaking of age, I'm just speaking of experience within the industry. That osmosis piece, just hearing what's going on, hearing the tone of a phone call. If there's a difficult, one of your colleagues, an experienced colleague, is handling a difficult call, you start to listen in, don't you? And you can hear how that call, and you think, you know what, they're staying calm, they're being really generous, they're investing some time. That's how to handle a call. And you pick that up purely through osmosis. You won't get that working in a home environment or a virtual environment. So there's, without question, there is value in being back in the office, but it does depend, again, on the person and on the function. As I say, most of our team tend to head into the office for 1 or 2 days a week. That's it for TPI. But of course, we make a point of having quite a number of socials. We get together. During COVID, I recruited people from all across the country. So I've got customer service people in the Midlands. This is supposed to be London-based in theory, but in the Midlands, down in Colchester. My PA is north of Newcastle. She's a little bit further north, and she'll be on the other side. In fact, she is actually on the other side of Hadrian's Wall, thinking about it. So they're dotted all over, and some people come in and some people don't.
Yeah.
A 300-mile commute would be a little bit rich for the Karen, but there is an osmosis point, and setting culture without having an office presence is doable. We've done it. We've built a business. We did the full merger. All of that was done on, the growth of the business, and then the merger and the setting of the new culture was done entirely online. So it can be done.
Yeah,
it can be done. But especially when you're bringing in new blood, it's great to be able to sit in the office and have a chat.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? And and nothing, like, you can't set a rule. You've just got to deal with each individual or each subject and its own with its own merits, and deal with it that way. We're exactly the same. Our development team was based. We have an office in Southampton, an office in Glasgow, and our development team was Southampton based, and that's historical because I used to run a business down there. When I started CPL, I took a couple of people with me, so that's where it started. And our Southampton office now is a storage room with a couple of desks. I mean, it's the same office; there's just a pile of rubbish in it. But the guys go there for to meet up and things like that. But we now have developers, Glasgow. I mean, they're spread. I think the furthest north is Glasgow, but the furthest south is the South Coast. So you cannot get them together. So but it comes back to something you said earlier. You want the best person for the job, right? That best person for the job, if they're in Newcastle, they're in Newcastle. You find a way to make that work. Yeah. So if you're looking for the people who fit your culture, who are the best people for the job, and people who can enhance your business and help you grow your business, then you've got to find a way to make it work. Okay, so last thing on recruitment, and this is kind of touching on you, and you stayed away from this in the last question. This is kind of touching on younger generation. You were talking about bringing people on experience or getting less experience regardless of age. There is a whole raft of people talking about Gen Z, Gen Z, whichever way you want to say it, younger people who they're looking for how the job benefits them, and they're probably moving around quite a bit job-wise. That is certainly not the route of a Gen X, someone like me, who has had one interview in his entire life. Yeah. Maybe for promotion, but you know what I mean, moving jobs, moving companies. That's kind of they're not the same. So you could think they don't sit together, I guess. Have you got any views on or have you had to do anything to accommodate these kind of different views of different generations?
From an educational point of view, the younger generation, so that, as I say that, I sound so terribly old, and perhaps I am. The younger generations, their learning styles are very different. They're very digital. They're very device-based. They can acquire information very quickly. They're very good at sifting information very quickly. Yeah. But there is no doubt that there is a trend for shorter, sharper content.
Yeah.
Learning by reading text, a lot of pages. Excuse me. Learning by reading a load of pages of text and then regurgitating that in an exam. It's becoming increasingly challenging. What happens is they're looking for far more engaging ways of learning. So we have a full-time Moodle ninja, Binu, and he his entire life is dedicated to making learning material more interesting and engaging and visual. And he's already using AI packages for converting text to speech and things like that.
Right. Okay.
So that it can be taken in through the ears, it can be taken in a podcast, it can be struck down into bite size instructional videos. Now we're putting markers all over them, so in a something that might last an hour, actually people are only dialing in for just that little bit in the middle. So there's a marker so they can just land straight on it, see the bit that they want. I think there's another trend, which is that there is less retention of information in their heads, and we can see that as an old bloke, 57. I used to remember dozens of phone numbers in my head. I don't remember a single phone number now, hardly, because it's all in my phone. So I don't need to know it, therefore I don't bother to put it into my head. And the availability of information, the ability to access information, means that, again, there's less of a requirement now for people to remember stuff. So it becomes a challenge if they sit an exam and the question is, what part of which act does a thing relate to? They kind of struggle with the act. They kind of, is it open brackets part B, close brackets, open brackets 2, close brackets? They tend to be less familiar with that, but they would understand the general principles, and more importantly, they just simply know where to look it up. Why do I need to remember that stuff when it's at my fingertips?
Yeah.
The advent of AI is going to further that.
Yeah.
Again, if we use the analogy, back in the old days, I remember when calculators came in for maths exams. How do you mean you take a calculator to a maths exam? You're letting the machine do the job for you. And AI is going to have that similar sort of revolution, which is it's a phenomenally powerful tool, which can be used really badly. A classic one, if you want to go to ChatGPT, is if you ask ChatGPT the question, who set the world record for crossing the English Channel on foot? And it will give you an answer, because clearly nobody's crossed it on foot. But it will give you an answer, and it's basically just lied. It's just made stuff up. Depending on how. So the ability to use the tool becomes a new skill, and that's a new skill which nobody had a few weeks ago. But already they're highly adept at it. So the ability to use new technologies and to locate and interpret information is changing dramatically, and that's about to go through another really big change. Next 2 years, we'll see a huge shift in how AI is delivering information. Not just to the professionals, but of course also to our customers.
To be fair, I've had various kind of conversations with people about AI. I know we're getting slightly off topic, but I guess it is about how people consume information. And someone told me yesterday about a thing. Well, the one thing is ChatGPT. If you just log on, I think it's based on data. Nearly 2 years ago.
September 2021.
2021. So there's a if you ask it something about a record that's been broken in the last nearly 2 years, I think you're going to get the wrong answer. But I was listening. In fact, I tell you, our head of people and culture, was on an AI course for HR, which she found was fascinating. One of the things that I was giving a lecture was something in America where a paralegal didn't do the research and just asked ChatGPT. So their partner or their boss or whatever in the business walked into court and started reeling off the state versus X and the state versus Y. And that solicitor is now no longer practicing because they were disbarred because the paralegal just asked ChatGPT and it made it up. So all of this stuff that was talking about was just rubbish. It didn't happen. So you're right. It's actually quite scary. But someone said to me yesterday, I was having a drink with some neighbors last night, and he's in data, and he said he's a statistician, and he said to me, "Do you think which businesses do you think will still be here in 5 years? What will still be relevant?" And that's an extremely difficult question to answer. So imagine a property factoring being not run by people. That's pretty much impossible. That doesn't bear thinking about at a precise moment in time. But it may.
There's a number of components to this, isn't there? One is the ability for human interaction. We spoke of that when we were talking about within the office, and in fact we started on that in terms of it was about communication, wasn't it? Well, if a customer is looking for an answer, the bin store is overflowing when will you get it emptied? That's something that AI is pretty close to doing. In fact, with the right programming, you can get it done now.
Yeah.
To get the thing emptied, and the customer is generally happier. Octopus Energy, during the energy crisis, were being deluged with calls. So 6 weeks they implemented AI on their customer service desk. Hello Octopus. I'm frightened about the new bills. What's my best tariff? What are my options?
Yeah.
And the AI scored a higher customer service rating than the humans. Okay. Now, in fairness, the humans were probably left dealing with the really tricky stuff, so that's probably a bit of a skewed thing. But AI can certainly drive better consumer outcomes for certain things. But when it comes to having a meeting on site to discuss a thing and its motive, the humans will be there. So I think humans will continue to be very much involved in managing buildings, managing people's homes. Again, it comes back to that comment earlier about the fact that the homes and money are highly emotive. I think the professionals will use AI to deliver better services, getting that bin store emptied quickly. For example, let the machine do that and crack on with it and just give you a report. So I think the future is there will still be humans involved. I think the AI will be able to deliver better services, better communications. I think it will be used well. It will be a really good tool. And you can see it already. If you use Microsoft Outlook already, you can see that Outlook is reading what you are receiving in your emails and starting to suggest first lines back. We know that that's just going to increase, isn't it? Soon, but Outlook will just be giving you the whole email to respond and just saying approve it. And that means as a property manager, you will be approving things rather than necessarily authoring them. So you'll be approving and tweaking. And making that relationship with the customer. So I don't see AI taking property managers out of business or people out of the business. I see it being a fantastic tool coming forward. With that, of course, you've got the threats about things like data integrity and data ethics. And I think that, again, then comes back to the profession being a properly ethical profession, making sure that people's data isn't abused and taken away for nefarious purposes. Bit of a wide-ranging response to that one.
Yeah, that one kind of went a wee bit off topic.